The president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Afam Osigwe, a senior advocate, has strongly criticized the public donation of cars and houses to judges by governors, calling it demeaning. Osigwe, who shared his thoughts during a television interview, expressed concern over how these gestures sometimes come with a public display and boastful remarks from the governors. Osigwe argued that the judiciary's needs, including vehicles and infrastructure, should be properly budgeted for within the government and not treated as favors from the executive. He stressed that this practice undermines the independence of the judiciary. The NBA president further emphasized that such donations create the perception that the judiciary is under the influence of the executive. He said, and I quote, "is demeaning and ought not to be. The judiciary should be an independent part of government. They should not be reduced to receiving handouts as if it's a favor being done to them." End of quote. I'm now being joined by Jiti Ogunye, a public interest attorney and legal analyst, to discuss these remarks made by the president of the NBA, Afam SAN, about the public donation of cars and houses to judges by state governors. Thank you for joining me, Jiti Ogunye.
Good evening, Dr. Abati.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Nigerians and viewers.
Okay, very quickly, I thought in August 2024, the federal government of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu then, I think, signed into law the remuneration, enhanced remuneration for the judiciary. The first time since 2007 that will happen. 17 years until government decided to improve the welfare of judges. That was at the time of YC Mekiawu, SAN, as NBA president. Now we have Afam Osigwe, SAN, as NBA president. And he is complaining that judges should not be at the mercy of the executive. And that many of these governors, they will say they have donated houses and vehicles and even picked up medical treatment bills for judges and their families as if they are doing them a favor. Now, why is there this problem between the federal level and the state level? Or is it still a general problem at both the federal and state level in terms of the welfare of judges?
Well, thank you. That problem has been with us for some time, and I call it a problem, as I will later expatiate time permitting. And I can say that it's not only, evident at the federal level or the central level. It's also evident at the state level. It's happened in Lagos even as recent as 2 years ago, and we had reason on that occasion to intervene based on the invitation by the media when we made a comment on that judges should not be lined up to be given
handouts,
car keys, as if they were being done a favor by the executive branch of government. But generally, let me say this. The statement by the president of the Nigerian Bar Association is well intended and well delivered, and I applaud that statement. It is true that in recent times there's been increased concentration on the issue of welfare of judicial officers and appropriate remuneration for them. There has also been the issue of the extension of their tenure at the level of the states, both in the federal judiciary and the state judiciary, by this same administration. And I'm talking about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, when state judges and federal high court judges, NIC, meaning the National Industrial Court judges, had their term of office extended to 70 years, just like the Court of Appeal justices and the Supreme Court justices. And on the back of that, the president also, made appointment to the Supreme Court saw that for the first time since 1999, we had the full complement of the court, 21 justices. Although it's also, there's a depletion now, because since then, the former CJN had retired. And so the Supreme Court is short one person, I assume, because nobody has retired in recent times. The point is that the judiciary is the third arm of government. But it's not only the third arm of government, it's that arm of government that functions as the arbiter between persons, between governments, between government and persons, and between authorities. So it's expected that the judiciary will remain impartial and independent and be well-funded to discharge its functions, both in terms of infrastructure and in terms of adequate welfare and remuneration. And so when those in the executive branch of government, because we need to understand that an arm of government then, plays the role of benefactor to the judiciary, there are problems. It is said that justice must not only be done, but be seen to have been done. And the judiciary, people talk about actual bias and, real likelihood of bias. And I'm just using that to illustrate the point. So it is not the issue that those donations, those assistance, actually, based on data, had corrupted the judiciary. The likelihood of it is enough to prohibit such action. So this act of Greek benevolence or Greek gift should be discontinued. The judiciary should be funded within its budget. And there are constitutional provisions to the effect that money standing to the credit of judiciary should be handed over to the head of the judiciary, both at the state level and at the federal level. And the agency has been taking custody of this money. There are other issues with whether the judiciary can actually be allowed to implement their own budget, spend their own money in the way it's been suggested, because that could raise other problems and all that, receiving tenders, awarding contracts, and so on and so forth. These issues continue to be ongoing debates. However, it is not appropriate, in my considered view, for us to have state governments in the executive branch of government, providing for the judiciary, building quarters for them, and so on and so forth. People can argue the point that, what are you saying? But the state government also build courts for judicial officers to make their work more comfortable and all that. They provide infrastructure and all that. Is it when it has to do with their housing and their remuneration and all other things and vehicles that you are complaining? Why should you be complaining? You don't even like the judges anyway. That's not the point. The point is that for state governments, federal government building courts, it is expected that they are not doing the judiciary a favor. The expenditure is part and parcel of the budget of the state. So the governor is not spending his own money. Okay. It may be argued or contended that even when they buy cars for judicial officers, they are not spending their own money anyway. Okay, Jiti. The point, however, is that the manner in which this is dispensed, it raises a legitimate question of whether it will not undermine the independence of the judiciary. Nobody is saying that vehicles of judicial officers should not be changed within their budget. Yes, those who are in the executive every 2-3 years, they change their cars, or every time they get inaugurated in the National Assembly or State Assembly, they bought new cars, and so on and so forth. New furnitures. Nobody is saying that this should not happen. But the way and manner it is done, undermines and impacts the independence of the judiciary. And I think that the NBA president and the NBA in general, got it right this time. Okay, how about the moral question? Judges are expected to be above board, as they say, like Caesar's wife. Now,
One of the things that has been said, can you hear me? One of the things that has been said is that, in fact,
I can hear you now, sir.
Is that in the state, it's even the chief judges that go to lobby the governors. After all, sometimes some of these chief judges, they are like members of the convoy of the governor, always attending public events with the governors, even when that may not be really necessary. How about the moral question? Can't the judges, some of them, say, well, you are distributing cars, I don't want. You are distributing houses. I don't think it is right for judges to collect houses from governors or senators or whoever. What do you say to that? Or is it just the Nigerian factor?
I think that, first, I think that chief judges or heads of court will not have to lobby the executive branch of government for provisioning if the judiciary is well funded and there is no need for them to run to the executive branch of government cap in hand. So we return to the first position. That is, fund the judiciary very well so that there will be no excuse for heads of judges to go to lobby the executive branch of government for provisioning. The second point is that the moral issue you raised is valid. However, my view is that it becomes difficult when those things are brought, cars, new cars, and judges are to be given, and then individual judges who then have to exercise their conscience and say, no, I don't want it. If one judge doesn't take it, the other is not bound to follow the first judge, and so on and so forth. So rather than have that kind of situation and leave it to the discretion and the prerogative and the conscience of individual judges, it should be a matter of policy respected by the head judges, representing the judiciary as a whole, that, look, we don't accept things like this. If quarters are to be built for us, it's good, make it part of the budget so that it can be well done. And don't then orchestrate it and, sensationalize it and exhibit it as part of your achievement at the executive branch of government. It impinges on the integrity and the independence of the judiciary. And of course, as I've said earlier, the public watches. Because they want to see that judges like Caesar's wife are above board. Always, they do.
Hello, Jiti Ogunye, can you hear me? Okay, it looks like we have a problem with the audio connection there. We'll take a short break, and then when we return, the conversation with Jiti Ogunye will continue. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Our guest is still Jiti Ogunye, a public interest attorney and legal analyst. Jiti, thank you for staying with us. Well, I think we spent quite some time on that particular subject of judges receiving handouts from the executive arm of the government. There was another statement issued by the Nigerian Bar Association this week, and that's relating to the matter involving Kwamwan, the Fuji musician, involving airlines, traveling from Lagos to from Abuja to Lagos on ValueJet airline. And then the other case, 5 days later, involving Miss Comfort Emanson of, with Ibom Air. And, the statement by MBA was talking about the violation of our right to dignity and all of that. Now, what do you make of these two incidents? Because some people have said summarily that this is a case of, one law for two different categories of persons, and that, fundamental human rights should not be violated, and that regulatory authorities should be allowed to play their role instead of the executive being the judge, the accuser, and the jury in a matter involving other players. What do you think of these two incidents?
Well, thank you. What I think is that the government, and here I'm talking about the Honorable Minister of Aviation, could have handled the matter better. The first reaction received some plaudits, but as the matter went on, the Honorable Minister appeared to be concerned with ensuring normalcy and stability in the aviation sector, being his jurisdiction, and therefore a kind of knee-jerk approach was adopted just to quickly resolve the matter, more or less like a quick fix solution so that life can continue as normal and as usual. But in trying to do that, which for me was a political approach to the issue, certain important things were overlooked. One of them is that there are allegations of right violations. And so if there are allegations of right violations, and there was a promise initially of investigation, which promise belatedly was being fulfilled when the police intervened and said that they were ready for investigation, and I'm talking about the Abuja incident involving Kwam, the Fuji musician, that ought to have been allowed to run its course. I say here that the problem the elites, the political elites, and our institutions have seem to be that they are impatient for the rule of law to run its course, for the due process to take place. Let's stay on the Kwam incident. If there had been an investigation by the police, and the police, had come up with a report, that report most likely could be called for by the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, and a decision will be taken whether there is a prima facie case to proceed. And even if that matter had proceeded to prosecution, and there had been adjudication, and there had been, sentencing and pronouncements and all that, there are ways in which, that matter could not end up in somebody being sent to prison, because the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has many provisions for community service, for non-custodial punishment, etc., etc. And even if there was a punishment at the end of the day, which was custodial or non-custodial, the prerogative of mercy provision in the Constitution could have been later called in aid to give reprieve to anybody or make anybody an ambassador and all that. I recall here that during the COVID-19 situation, a famous thespian, a famous actor or actress was caught on the wrong foot. And on that occasion, the Lagos state government, rushed a charge to court. And there was a prosecution, and there was admittance of guilt or admission of guilt, and there was sentencing. It was later that the Lagos state government then granted pardon to that same person. And so that's the vindication of the rule of law, because central to the rule of law is also the principle of equality of all before the law. Elsewhere, I think that more pretenses are dished out just so that people will think that there's fidelity to the rule of law. But you see, here, people are too hasty. They just say, oh, if that were to happen, let's nip it in the bud. We don't know what may happen later. That's not how the law should work. And that's for the Quam 1 incident. For what people now call Quam 2, although it's not Quam 2, but that's how people have labeled it. I think that that issue, if you ask me, on the facts, are not the same with the issue in Abuja. But I think that the issue of indecent exposure was then projected, rightly or wrongly, to overshadow the real issues and, if you ask me, obfuscate them. And what are the real issues here? We had the issue of in-flight or on-board behavior by passengers, on-board governance by the air hostesses and crew, obeying instructions and all that, and the issue of whether a scuffle is tolerable on board, depending on who started it or who initiated it and all that, and how, a recalcitrant, quote and unquote, passenger could be decently removed from a plane when that passenger was resisting, evidently, But all those issues came up. But the NBA, in this press statement, seemed to be very judgmental, if you ask me, and very categorical on who was wrong and who was right. I think that the latter statement that we are reviewing by the NBA, for me, was too hasty in jumping to such conclusions. The NBA could have raised its concern about how those things played out and generally and all that and that. Look, let the law take its course. But the NBA was more forthcoming in the latter one by being categorical and say that this is what has happened, this the wrong that have been committed, and so on and so forth. But overall, for me, I think that those two issues raise very serious issues about the rights of citizens in this country, whether we have equal rights, and whether justice will be served when rights are infringed or when there is an infringement of the law across the board. It's said usually that you so high a personality, the law is higher than you. What these two incidents, tend to show, unfortunately, is that the law discriminates. The law sees. The law have emotions. The law can then, pardon an offender or overlook an offense, and then not overlook an offense for the other person. It used to be said jurisprudentially that it's a farce, that the principle of equality of all before the law is a farce, that, it was a professor that said that a driver cannot have the same right with the principal who is being chauffeur driven and so on and so forth. But for me, it shouldn't be a myth. It should be an ideal that we strive to emulate, an ideal that we try to vindicate at all times. And finally, in those two occasions, I think that Nigeria just dropped the ball. Because you can use that to also ensure that people don't misbehave, that people comport themselves properly, people observe the rule of law. But once it is accepted that, no matter how egregious your conduct or criminal, conduct, that can be settled. That does not serve the Nigerian people. If you are serious about building democracy, rule of law, and a country where the rights of citizens are observed.
Okay, Jiti, finally. The NBA is going to hold its annual General Conference 2025 now in Enugu from August 22nd to 28th of August. Against the background of that controversy with Rivers State and the certain 300 million that was given to the NBA, do you have any insider information as to what eventually happened with that 300 million and what are your expectations for this conference in Port Harcourt, in Enugu, the coast city, where issues will include issues about inclusion, entertainment law, the future, the future farm, and all of that, those details?
Yeah, I have no insider information on what actually happened. I knew that, and that was in the public domain, that there was back and forth about release the money, we won't release the money, and so on and so forth. And that debate, just petered out in a typical Nigerian way of one event superseding the other, and then people forgetting about what has happened in the past and all that. So layers and layers and layers of things that happen, and then we tend to forget what the situation is. But I think that matter ought to be resolved. The NBA had taken a position that was how it was going to treat the matter, that they didn't compel the Rivers State government to give them the money. But my view, was that the money was venue specific. Even if you are to say that NBA shouldn't be, because we talked about judges shouldn't go cap in hand. Now, NBA has the right to raise money, but the NBA has very moneyed members who are comfortable. The NBA generates funds from fees, so the NBA should be able to run its affairs without going to a government house to do that, because once you do that, worse, if the money is extra budgetary, because you won't have any line of the budget of that state or any other state where I will say that donation to NBA will be reflected. You may say that it's a matter of detail. They have security vote anyway, but we always be complaining about security vote that they don't account to anybody for. Okay? So if NBA is receiving such money, NBA tomorrow will not be able to condemn such extra budgetary spending and frivolous spending. So I have fundamental objection, to that kind of money. But since that's what the NBA leadership said it will do, that it will keep the money, it will be good for the AGM of NBA, for that conference, as a body, to revisit that matter and put a position on the ground. Because it's possible for the ESCO, the executive of the NBA, after an election, to then think that they hold the destiny of the members and they can do as they wish within the confines of the Constitution, even when members are complaining. So it will be good for us to have a resolution on that subject on the floor of the annual general conference.
Okay, thank you very much.
The second thing quickly is that, and as I'm run off, the second thing quickly is that I hope that the NBA will be able to deal with critical issues, facing the profession and the judiciary. It's good that they're going to Enugu to have a meeting, but the truth of the matter is that not too long ago, the Court of Appeal was contemplating moving certain divisions out of the Southeast because of security consideration to other satellite divisions where judges could sit. I don't know whether that actually occurred, but that should tell us that the issue of insecurity in the Southeast is a problem. Lawyers have been shot, our courts have been burnt, and all sorts of things that happened. And I think that while the NBA is looking at one incident of what happened to in Akwa Ibom area situation, the NBA should also look at those critical issues, particularly given the venue of the annual general meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Jiti Ogunye, for joining us on this Live, the Sunday Talk Show. Thank you very much indeed.